Now, you're talking about Prince Philip as one of the founding members of this Bilderberg institution. And Prince Philip, as you said earlier, I'm not sure if you said this today, but I remember hearing in a speech that you said he wanted to come back as a virus that would kill off 3/4, 2/3, or whatever
He said
of the world population.
1953.
Obvious eugenicist. Obvious eugenicist. Now, these crazed eugenicists are at the top of these organizations, and eugenics back in the 40s and 50s started getting a really bad rap. I mean, of course, Nazism was pretty much part of the eugenics movement, but it's been suppressed. And in fact, not even many people nowadays even know what this word means. But at the top of these structures, we have eugenicists. I read in a West Virginian-based newspaper the other day that there was a woman who was given as a plea bargain the opportunity to sterilize herself in order to avoid going to prison. It hasn't been a long time in this country since those kind of policies have been completely thrown out. Now they're starting to come back in. Obama himself supports infanticide. I signed a bill supporting infanticide, which is the killing of children after they're already coming out of the womb. I mean, it's completely ridiculous. You look at the food we eat nowadays. The FDA doesn't regulate the food. They're just a middleman. They get a little bit of extortion money, and they put these chemicals, pills out on the market that give people heart attacks. I see an increase in the eugenics movement. I mean, they're definitely staying underground. But how do you feel about the modern eugenics movement? I mean, are they really advancing this on us?
The purpose is simply to manage the population like cattle. And this is happening in our food supply. Monsanto is a typical case of that.
Right. And Monsanto has done so much horrible damage to other countries.
When you were younger, we used to have many kinds of apples in the United States. A wide variety of them. Then gradually, as you came to your present age, all these many kinds of apples disappeared, and you had a homogenized set of apples. In practically every other product, you find that you have a globalized food supply, which is actually very dangerous, because diversity in food stocks is our security against food diseases destroying our food supply. So the farmer no longer controls. Globalization means that you really have a Tower of Babel that runs the world. Nobody is allowed to grow their own food in their own country. You have to create a situation in which a middleman sells your food to some other country, and you get your food from another country. So you're no longer in control of your own population, your own ability to exist, because the world market now not only controls your food supply, but uses it, and other supply, uses it to control your income.
Now, one of the things that I thought was very interesting, talking about the food supply in almost eugenics, really, genetically modified food. Normally it takes 10 years for a new scientific process to pass through FDA regulation. Within 4 years of them of figuring out how to genetically modify food, it was passed through the FDA. And there's bills that they're working on now that state that they don't have to let you know that the food's genetically modified. I mean, there's no telling what can really go on with these foods when we eat them. Well, they're probably cancerous for our bodies.
It's actually true. That's actually true. But I wouldn't emphasize the conspiratorial thing in one way or another. I would simply say, what's the effect? The effect is your protection of food supplies against degeneration, diseases, and so forth of the genotype is diversity. For example, in India, they have the agriculture department in Delhi has samples of grains back to as far back as they can trace them existing. And the reason they do that, the purpose they do that, is to, they do some engineering of food supply, but the purpose there is to increase the variety and quality of the stock, of seed stock, so that you never put humanity in jeopardy by this kind of manipulation. The monopolistic tendency, like Monsanto is the typical criminal case on grain, is to limit the food supply to certain genotypes, which put the humanity at risk by doing that, and then to use that weapon of control, of threatening genocide by food control against populations.
Food is definitely a prime weapon to control the masses. Another prime weapon to control the masses, and I know you're a great historian, is false flag terrorism. Now, we know Nero burnt Rome back in the day in order to control his population, get them to go in war. Hitler burnt the Reichstag in order to
Well, actually, the British did it for him.
I'm not aware of that, but it was a false flag terrorist incident.
Yeah.
I personally believe, from all my research, that the events that happened on 9/11 is a false flag terror operation that was designed to get people to not only agree to a war that it was unjust, but I mean it's a catalyst essentially that passed so much legislation that has stripped America of its civil liberties.
Absolutely correct. We know who did it. It was done by the forces in the U.S. and England and Saudi Arabia. It was funded by Saudi Arabia. The key figure in the area was Prince Bandar. They had the British build up around the oil game. They built up an institution which had secret cash. In other words, the oil was being sold in the port in Saudi Arabia at one price and would arrive in the market in Europe at another price after this 1973 operation. So what they did is they would simply take some of this oil, put it on the books at the Saudi export price, transfer it to England or the Netherlands, and then sell it as the product of an institution which was tied to the Saudi kingdom, which sold it. They created a vast fund of money on the basis of this discrepancy. They became the largest military force on the planet in terms of what they controlled, in terms of this funding. A big swindle, in which Prince Bandar, the former Saudi ambassador to the United States and an heir to the Saudi throne, was a key figure. Osama bin Laden was part of this. The whole operation was part of that.
Or Tim Osman, as they like to call him.
No, that's exactly. But the whole thing was an operation against the United States. It was not quite as extreme in one sense as the killing of Kennedy, but it was the same kind of operation. And it was done to this. This has often happened in history. You know, you have a thing, a law against conspiracy theories. Well, if you don't know what a conspiracy theory is, you have good ones and bad ones. And the good ones maybe are very important to have.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. Our group, We're Change, we're all about taking action for yourself, and for people, and making a stand. Really, not relying on anybody else to speak out for you. And we all strive to find the best way possible to wake up our fellow man and take action against these tyrants, these eugenicists, these criminals, demons, really, that are out to crush humanity. What do you think is one of the best ways for our group and everybody else, really, who is concerned about their freedom and about their country? What do you think is one of the best ways we can stand up against these people?
You got a couple of ways you have to work on it. You have to work on two. One is what I do in general, and I go at the top, because you have to have people who are organized around dealing with a problem at the top of society. You have, at the same time, you have people out there who are poorly informed and who need to be brought into a certain growing sense of what reality is, because they're confronted with all kinds of things which they think are real, but they're not real.
Right.
And the only way they free themselves from slavery to propaganda is by organizing. Now, you have a gap. It's easier to get mass organization on the basis of local issues which are immediately apparent to people.
Mm-hmm.
But you won't win the war unless you go at the top level.
Right.
So therefore you have two levels of organizing. One level is the popular level, where it's important is heel and toe work, heel and toe organizing around groups which are affinity groups, create affinity groups, which
Mm-hmm.
are conscious of some aspects of the problem and open-minded about other ones.
Right.
But then you need someone at the top who knows how to run the damn thing.
Definitely, sir. Mr. LaRouche, that's all the questions we have for you today. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer.
I think you sort of answered my questions by your questions.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And I can't thank you enough for giving us your time.
Well, good.